Hello friends, thanks for joining me today. I thought it would be fun to do a little retrospective video on my reading in 2025. I know I'm a little bit late, probably should have done this in January, but I'm gonna go ahead and look at some stats today, kind of give my own commentary on how I think things went and where things are going. This will probably be a little random and scattered, and I have my phone to look at some stuff, so I might be looking down, but I hope you enjoy, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to start with some fun facts and stats. Those are always satisfying and interesting, and I'm going to try and put some graphics up over the course of this video as well. So I like Goodreads for a lot of reasons. I know that people have their issues with it, but I enjoy it for some things. Storygraph does have more in-depth stats, so a lot of these I'll be pulling from Storygraph because it just provides more data. So I read a total of 71 books in 2025. My original goal was 80 books, but I ended up lowering it to 70 in December because this is arbitrary and a personal number, and I can shift the goalposts if I want to. And this will probably be the last video that I mention this. If you watch my videos regularly, you've heard me use this excuse several times and are probably over it, but I got married in September, so I spent a lot of time last year wedding planning and just generally being stressed about it, which ate up a lot of the free time that I would have spent reading or gaming or whatever. And 71 books is still a lot, and I'm very happy with that number. In terms of format of books, these numbers are a little wishy-washy because this year, 2025, I read some books in multiple formats at once. For example, the last thing I read in 2025, which was A Land So Wide by Aaron A. Craig, I swapped between reading the physical book and listening to the audiobook, but I picked only one format for each book to track. So the majority read was actually audiobooks, with about 30 books at 42%, followed by physical books at 31%, 22 books, and lastly, digital books at 27%, about 19 books. Which makes sense because I had less time to just be sitting and reading last year, and I found that this year in particular, that if I was reading a physical or Kindle digital book but was not really into it, most likely because I was kind of bored or something, I would, if possible, check out the audiobook from the library and read it that way, so I could do things like clean or exercise or be driving or whatever at the same time. I don't like paying for things twice, so I just use the library to get other formats if I'm not feeling what I started out in. In terms of ratings, Storygraph is 100% superior because it lets you rate down to quarter stars, which I love. So I'll put up a chart here of all of my ratings for 2025. I gave the most 3.5 star ratings, which makes sense. My ratings kind of generally follow the general shape of a bell curve. Most ratings will be near the average, but I also gave a decent amount of high 4.5 star ratings. That's my second highest rating that I gave most often, and I gave 6 books 5 stars, like full 5 stars, and I'll go ahead and put up an image of those books. Anything 4.5 stars and above is a great book. And Goodreads shows a total of 16 books that I gave 5 stars, since you have to round up or down to the full star. So I read a lot of really good books. But what I think makes these books, the 5 stars in particular, stand out as max rating is that, like, thinking back, there was never a moment reading these books where I was bored or impatient. Other books that I might have rounded up had at least like a couple moments maybe where the pacing got a little slow, or maybe I didn't like how a character was written in a certain moment, or I just never quite got actively excited, really excited about the book. And it can be really hard to just really nail down exactly why, I like or dislike something. Sometimes it's vibes. I think that books I rated 4.5 or 4.75 are still great and worth reading, but you know, you gotta draw the line somewhere, and these 6 books just had something extra special about them. And this is a graph showing the number of books that I read and the number of pages read each month. Generally not going to be the most interesting graph to me. Each month follows a similar shape for both, except for April, where there's a big discrepancy between books read, which was 5, and pages read, which was 3,040. And that's because that's the month that I read Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, which is well over 1,000 pages in itself. I think it's like around 1,300 pages. Plus I also read Oathbound by Tracy Dion, which is also a decent size. It's like 650 pages. So yeah, I just kind of thought that was funny. So Goodreads has about 150 million users compared to Storygraph's 4 million. So for this little tidbit, I am going to go off of Goodreads database. It's more comprehensive. I think this is a really fun thing to look at the end of the year. I always look forward to it. And this is the most shelved and least shelved book that I read. And in this case, shelved means the total number of people who marked it as like want to read, read, or currently reading, which encompasses most of the baseline interactions that you can have with a book on Goodreads. And here they are. So the most shelved book was The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which is the 3rd and final book of her very popular Folk of the Air YA fantasy series. I loved it, gave it 4.5 stars. Has a human girl surviving in the world of the Fae with a lot of court intrigue. And the least shelved was the 3rd and final book of the Miss Percy's Guide series, called Miss Percy's Definitive Guide to the Restoration of Dragons by Quenby Olson, which was a really delightful historical fantasy, which is a genre that I adore. It has like cozy vibes about an awkward woman who finds herself in possession of a dragon egg. I just find it very interesting to see what extremely popular thing I engaged with, as well as how niche and, you know, small time I got. Both are fantasy, both were great books, you know, which was nice. Then of course we have the longest and shortest books I read this year. And the longest book comes as no surprise, I just mentioned, which was Wind and Truth. It was too long, in my opinion, and The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke was the shortest at 60 pages. But like, I don't know, it's only technically, like there are 60 pages in the book, but the actual story is like 50 pages. There's a long afterword at the end, long meaning 10 pages out of 60. And then a lot of the 50 pages are artwork or only like a paragraph or a sentence long. So this thing was like super short in terms of actual story. It wasn't that great, not worth it. I read 37 books that were part of a series. And as a fantasy reader, I do have a lot of books that are part of a series. So breaking that down a little, 25 of those books, about 68%, were the first book in a series. And 8 books, about 32%, were the last in a series or the most current book in the series, even if it isn't complete yet. So I'm prone to starting new series rather than finish them. I think that a lot of fantasy readers have that problem. I see it a lot in videos of people that people make, like trying to finish series. But perhaps most interesting to me is how many series did I DNF. So typically if I'm going to DNF a series, I will do it after reading the first book. So in total, I read books across 35 different series. I did read the entirety of the Arc of a Scythe trilogy in 2025. Those only count as one series. And of those, I decided not to continue 12 of those series, which is about 35%. So when you look at it, it isn't too bad. I'm only committed to continuing about half of the new series that I started, and I did finish, or at least caught up on, about a third of the series that I read in 2025. So I'm still starting a little more than I'm finishing, but you know, this is also just 1 year's worth of data. I'll have to see how it kind of looks over the course of a few years. I'd like to reach a point where I'm not starting more series that I'm finishing. Just kind of part of the struggle of being a fantasy reader. There are a lot of series out there, and for me specifically, I'm not sure why, and this didn't used to be the case when I was growing up, but as an adult, I rarely binge read a series. I like to spread them out. So I don't know, the fact that I started and finished even one series, a trilogy, is crazy, just based on the recent years' reading habits. Maybe it's because I have such a huge TBR that it feels like I'm not making progress through it if it's the same series, which doesn't really make sense at all, but that's just kind of how my brain categorizes books in a series. It's all grouped into one, even if there's multiple books. And as for genres, here's a breakdown, and books are counted multiple times because a book is so often, you know, not just one genre. So not surprising whatsoever that over half of the books I read in 2025 had some sort of fantasy element. I will be shocked the day that fantasy is not the top category of books that I read. I really felt like I was starting to just really enter my horror era this year. I started adding more horror books to my TBR. I've been enjoying like horror booktubers, just really, I don't know, enjoying reading horror. So we'll see where next year takes me there. I'd love to read more books in that vein, in the horror vein. I'm also not surprised that LGBTQIA is a top category. We love queer stories and characters here. Young adult is so broad, but I'm also not surprised that it's one of the top categories for me. We'll see how that changes in the future. I still have a lot of YA on my TBR, but I am starting to age out of it a little bit. I'm much more selective about adding YA books to my TBR nowadays, and if I do, it's often because it's from an author that I've already read from and know that I enjoy. I'd like to read a few more sci-fi books this year and kind of get that number up. And you know, as a challenge, I'd like to try and read at least one nonfiction book. I did not read a single nonfiction book in 2025. I am just not really a nonfiction reader, but that isn't to say that I don't have any on my TBR. I do, in fact, have a single shelf in this room that is mostly nonfiction, but just typically I'm in the mood for escapism, which isn't what nonfiction typically is for. So maybe I'll muster up the gumption to read one of my nonfiction books this year, but yep, didn't happen last year. So there are only a few authors whose books I read more than one of in 2025, and those are Neal Shusterman, his Arc of a Scythe trilogy that I mentioned, T. Kingfisher, I read 2 of her books, and Silvia Moreno Garcia, I read 2 of her books as well. And now that I've read 3 total of her books, and I've just decided that Silvia Moreno Garcia isn't the author for me. I'm mostly lukewarm on the ones that I have read, even though I did enjoy the second half of Mexican Gothic quite a lot. She's just not my style. I love the books I've read by Neal Shusterman. He writes YA, and I would love to read an adult novel by him. I don't think he really writes adult novels, but if he did, I'd be on it. And I do consider T. Kingfisher a favorite author, but I do want to read more of her books to just confirm that. She has a lot of books, and she releases so frequently. I own a lot of her books, but currently I have more unread books by her than I have read books, so I need to read what I have before I buy whatever her next release is, and I don't know, feel more certain in saying that she's a favorite author. But on the flip side, I did read from 44 new authors this year that I hadn't read from before. There's a lot of books out there, man, and a lot of authors, so that's cool and not surprising for my reading tastes. I will definitely be reading from some of these authors again, either to continue a series or because I liked their writing style and want to read more by them. And, you know, there are plenty that I just didn't jive with as well, you know, which is just as valuable to know. So yeah, I'm happy with having read 71 books in 2025. My original goal was the 80, but yep, I ended up lowering it to 70, which is fine. And this is actually the least amount of books that I've read in a year since 2021. I know that it's still a lot, still a solid number, but yeah, just compared to previous years. So yeah, in 2021, I read 40 books and then made a crazy jump to 72 books in 2022, and I attribute that to the year that I fully embraced the audiobook life. If you want to read more books and aren't listening to audiobooks, there's a tip for you. And I just kept reading more and more books every year. I read 95 books in 2024, which is actually insane. I almost read 100 books in a year. This year for my reading goal, I went with 75, which based on previous years, I should be able to do. You know, this number is fake. No one but me cares about it. But, so I try not to actually let it like make me anxious or force me to read faster, you know, because there's just nothing like being forced to read to put you into a reading slump. And to be honest, I don't think I've really been in a reading slump since I started BookTube ever. There have been books that I had to push through to finish and I wasn't really enjoying, but I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like not reading anything or I'm having to like really force myself to read anything. So that's a good thing. It's just something that I get so much joy out of, and becoming, you know, more engaged in bookish content, creating my own content, starting a book club with my friends, putting together this amazing room in my house just has really only fueled my love for reading, which is so awesome. It feels so good. And BookTube is also not my job. I don't make money off of making content, so, you know, maybe that's part of why I haven't hit a reading slump. So I know it's trending right now to make a 26 in 2026 video where you talk about the 26 books you're most hoping to get to in 2026. I don't know, I don't have that long of a specific list because I'm a mood reader, but there are a few things that I really am gonna try and get to this year. And the first is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not really interested in finishing the Crescent City series, but I know that there is some crossover between it and her ACOTAR series. So I don't know, I'm reluctantly continuing. Honestly, continuing any series that I've started will be good, and that's a lot, so I won't list them all. But I do have an Excel spreadsheet that I've started to track my series reading. I got the idea from a booktuber that I only just recently started watching her stuff, so I don't remember her name, but I took the idea from her, so I'll like put her name somewhere. So I enjoy tracking all my stuff that way. So yeah, that's just one that has been looming over me for a while. I want to read Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. I've given every book by her that I've read 5 stars. I'd like to try and read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I've heard that it's great. We'll see. I hope I enjoy it. It may end up being a little too literary, I don't know, character-driven, poetic for my taste, but I don't know, people love it. Honestly, you know what's been catching my eye recently on my shelves? Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. It's a chonker, but people rave about this book. Like, it has a really high Goodreads rating and a lot of reviews, or ratings at least. I loved his Nevernight trilogy. It was amazing. I really like his writing. So I don't know, maybe this is the year that I finally tackle that book. And I do have the second book as well. I don't know, the third book hasn't come out yet, I don't think. I'm not even sure when it does. So yeah, incomplete series, but maybe I'll tackle it this year. So those are all of the things that I wanted to talk about, the stats that I found. I had fun doing this. I'm constantly kind of looking at my stats throughout the year. It's just very satisfying to me to see things change and update and get more comprehensive. So hopefully I will continue to do this kind of video and see trends across the years. My voice is giving out a little bit. I recorded a shorter video before this of my January wrap up, and this is kind of a longer video. I've been talking for quite a while, so we'll see if you can't hear my voice breaking near the end of this. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. If you have any cool stats or interesting things to talk about, let me know below. I guess one thing I didn't talk about was reading challenges, so I'll just tack on at the end here that I am doing once again the Beat the Backlist reading challenge, and I'm also trying a new reading challenge, well, new to me. I'm gonna do Kayla from Books and Lala, her buzzword reading challenge, which is like 1 book a month. I'm already behind. I didn't read the prompt for January, but I am about to start. It's February. I'm gonna start it now, and I'll count it towards January. So there's 12 prompts there, kind of some fun, interesting prompts that I haven't seen before. And yeah, I'm having a fun time doing things like that, helping me pick things to read. But anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed. I hope that 2025 was a good reading year for you. Hope that 2026 is even better. And I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.